The room was cold and gray like every other room in the Galactic Military Academy. Ethan Cole sat in the back row of the briefing hall, his arms crossed over his chest. Around him, hundreds of alien cadets whispered nervously to each other. Their voices filled the air like the buzzing of insects. Ethan did not join them. He simply watched and waited. The holographic display at the front of the room flickered to life. A planet appeared, spinning slowly in the blue light. It was covered in thick green jungles that stretched from pole to pole. Rivers cut through the forest like silver veins. Mountains rose above the canopy in jagged peaks. "This is Varath Prime," said Instructor Vethla. She was a Kethari, a tall insect-like creature with 6 limbs and compound eyes that reflected the light like broken glass. Her voice was sharp and cold. "Your survival examination will take place on this world. You will be dropped into the jungle. You will survive for 4 days. You will signal for extraction when the time comes." The whispers grew louder. Ethan heard the fear in their voices. He understood why. Varath Prime was famous across the galaxy. It was a hunting ground, a place where apex predators ruled every corner of the ecosystem. The Academy had used it for training exercises before. Many cadets had died there. "You will be assigned partners," Vethla continued. "You will work together. You will watch each other's backs. The jungle is not forgiving. If you are careless, you will die." Ethan looked around the room. The other cadets were already grouping together, finding friends and allies. A 4-armed Velix named Korin was organizing the squad assignments. He moved through the rows with a datapad, pairing cadets based on their skills and species compatibility. When Korin reached Ethan's row, he stopped. His 4 eyes blinked rapidly. He looked at the datapad, then at Ethan, then back at the datapad. "Human," Korin said. The word came out like a warning. "That's me," Ethan replied. Korin's upper arms twitched nervously. "You will go alone." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "Alone?" The instructor said we work in pairs. "You are a Deathworlder," Korin said. His voice dropped to a whisper, as if he was afraid the word itself might attract danger. "Everyone knows what happens when Deathworlders enter hostile environments. You attract predators. You bring violence wherever you go. Nobody wants to be your partner." Ethan looked at the other cadets. They were all watching him now. Some looked curious. Most looked afraid. A few looked at him with open hostility, as if his very presence was a threat to their survival. He could have argued. He could have demanded a partner like everyone else. But Ethan had learned long ago that arguing with fear was pointless. Fear did not listen to reason. "Fine," he said. "I'll walk alone." Korin nodded quickly and moved on to the next row. The tension in the room eased slightly, as if removing Ethan from the equation had made everyone feel safer. Ethan did not feel insulted. He did not feel angry. He simply felt the same calm that had carried him through every challenge in his life. Earth had taught him that calm. Earth had taught him many things. His homeworld was classified as a Category 7 Deathworld by the Galactic Concord. It was a planet of extreme weather, poisonous plants, venomous animals, deadly diseases, and constant geological upheaval. Earthquakes, hurricanes, volcanic eruptions, ice ages. Earth had thrown everything at humanity for millions of years. And humanity had survived. More than survived. They had conquered. The other species in the galaxy did not understand this. They came from gentle worlds with stable climates and predictable ecosystems. They had evolved in comfort. Humanity had evolved in war, a war against their own planet. The briefing ended and the cadets filed out of the hall. Ethan walked alone through the corridors of the space station. The walls were smooth and white. The air was filtered and temperature-controlled. It felt artificial, sterile. Nothing like the wild chaos of Earth. He reached his quarters and began packing his survival kit. The Academy provided standard equipment: a water purifier, a fire starter, a medical kit, a signal beacon, and a small knife. It was not much, but Ethan did not need much. His greatest weapon was not something he could carry in a bag. As he packed, His communicator beeped. A message appeared on the screen. It was from his grandfather. All the way back on Earth. Heard about your exam, the message read. Vareth Prime is no joke, but you're a Cole. You're from Earth. Remember what I always told you. Predators recognize predators. Walk tall, boy. Walk like you belong. The jungle will know what you are. Ethan read the message twice. A small smile crossed his face. His grandfather was a tough old man who had spent his whole life in the wilderness. He had taught Ethan how to track, how to hunt, how to survive. More importantly, he had taught Ethan how to carry himself. How to move through the world without fear. Fear was a signal. Animals could smell it, predators could sense it. When prey ran, it triggered the hunting instinct. But when something did not run, when something stood its ground without hesitation, it sent a different message entirely. It said, I am not food. I am something else. The next morning, the cadets gathered in the drop bay. Rows of small pods lined the walls, each one designed to carry a pair of cadets down to the planet's surface. Ethan walked to his pod alone. The other cadets watched him pass. None of them spoke to him. Corin stood near the launch controls. His forearms were shaking slightly. Good luck, human, he said. It sounded more like a prayer than a farewell. I won't need it, Ethan replied. He climbed into his pod and sealed the hatch. Through the small window, he could see Vareth Prime growing larger as the station orbited closer. The green jungles looked endless, beautiful, and deadly. Somewhere down there, apex predators were waiting, creatures that had evolved for millions of years to become perfect killing machines. Ethan's heart rate remained steady. His breathing was calm. His hands were still. Up in the command center, Instructor Vethla watched his biometric readings with growing unease. Every other cadet showed elevated stress hormones, increased heart rates, nervous system activation. Normal responses to danger, but the human showed nothing. His body was as calm as if he was taking a nap. What is wrong with him? One of the technicians asked. Vethla clicked her mandibles together slowly. Nothing is wrong with him. That is what worries me. The launch countdown began. The pods dropped one by one, falling toward the jungle below like seeds scattered by the wind. Ethan Cole's pod was the last to fall. He closed his eyes and let gravity take him. The jungle was waiting. The pod hit the ground with a heavy thud. Metal groaned and creaked as the impact absorbers did their work. For a moment, everything was still. Then the hatch blew open and warm, wet air rushed inside. Ethan climbed out and took his first breath of Vareth Prime. The air was thick and heavy. It tasted green, like living things and rotting things mixed together. The smell was overwhelming at first. A rich soup of plant life, animal musk, decay, and something else. Something wild. He looked around. The jungle pressed in from all sides. Massive trees rose hundreds of meters into the sky, their trunks covered in moss and strange fungal growths. The canopy above was so thick that only thin beams of sunlight reached the forest floor. Everything was painted in shades of green and shadow. Bioluminescent fungi glowed softly on the ground and along the tree roots. They gave off pale light in colors of green, blue, and violet. It was beautiful, Ethan thought. Deadly, but beautiful. He checked his survival kit and started walking. The academy instructors had told them to find shelter and wait for extraction. Stay hidden, avoid predators, survive. Ethan had a different plan. He wanted to see what this world had to offer. He wanted to meet its hunters face to face. His grandfather had taught him that running was often the wrong choice. When you ran, you became prey. When you hid, you admitted weakness. But when you walked forward with confidence, when you moved like you belonged, the rules changed. Ethan walked for an hour. The jungle was alive with sounds. Insects chirped and buzzed. Birds called from high branches. Somewhere in the distance, something large crashed through the undergrowth. The forest was never quiet, never still. He followed a narrow game trail that wound between the massive tree roots. The ground was soft and damp beneath his boots. Every few steps, he saw signs of animal activity. Claw marks on bark, droppings on the trail. Bones picked clean and scattered in the brush. This was a hunting ground. Predators ruled here. He was walking through their living room. Then he saw it. The creature emerged from the foliage about 10 meters ahead. It moved slowly, deliberately, like a shadow coming to life. Its body was low and powerful, built for speed and violence. 6 muscular legs supported a frame the size of a small car. Scales covered its hide in overlapping patterns that shifted color as it moved, blending with the shadows. A Sharak. Ethan had seen pictures during the briefing. The Sharak was one of the apex predators of Varath Prime. Its jaws could bite through starship hull plating. Its claws could tear through combat armor. It had 4 yellow eyes arranged in a diamond pattern on its broad skull. Those eyes were now fixed directly on Ethan. He stopped walking. Not because he was afraid, but because sudden movements would trigger a chase response. He stood still and met the creature's gaze. The Sharak lowered its head slightly. Its nostrils flared as it sniffed the air. A long, forked tongue slid out between its teeth, tasting the scent particles that drifted on the humid breeze. Ethan watched it work. He knew what it was doing. It was reading him, analyzing him, trying to figure out what he was. The Sharak had probably never seen a human before. Humans did not come to Varath Prime often. Most species avoided death worlds like the plague. But something in Ethan's scent, in his body language, in the calm steadiness of his heartbeat, was sending a message. He was not prey. Ethan took a slow breath and let it out. He did not break eye contact. He did not show his teeth. He did not make any aggressive moves. He simply stood there, as calm as a stone in a river. The Sharak tilted its head to one side. Its 4 eyes blinked in sequence, top to bottom. Something was happening behind those alien eyes. Some calculation was being made. Then, slowly, the Sharak stepped aside. It moved off the trail and into the undergrowth, its scales shifting to match the shadows. Within seconds, it had vanished completely. Ethan let out a long breath. His heart rate had not changed. His hands were still steady. But deep inside, he felt a flicker of something. Not fear. Something more like respect. The Sharak had sized him up and decided he was not worth the fight. That was interesting. That was very interesting. He continued walking. Back on the orbital station, Instructor Vethla was watching the live feed from Ethan's helmet camera. Her compound eyes were wide, reflecting the glow of the display screen. Her mandibles clicked together rapidly, a sign of extreme agitation. "Play it again," she said. The technician replayed the footage. Once, twice, 3 times. "That is impossible," Vethla said. "The Sharak does not back down. It is the dominant predator of the mid-level jungle. It has killed dozens of trained soldiers. It does not simply walk away." "But it did," the technician said. "We all saw it." Vethla stared at the frozen image on the screen. The human stood in the center of the frame, small and fragile-looking compared to the massive predator. And yet the Sharak had yielded. It had recognized something in that small, soft creature that made it choose to avoid confrontation. What did it see? Vethla wondered aloud. The technician shrugged. Maybe it wasn't hungry? No. A Sharak is always hungry. They are pure hunting instinct wrapped in scales and muscle. If it backed down, it was because it sensed something that told it this prey was not prey at all. She pulled up the human's biometric data. Heart rate, steady. Stress hormones, minimal. Brain activity, calm and focused. The boy had faced one of the most dangerous predators on the planet, and his body had barely reacted. "Pull up the files on Earth," Vethla ordered. "Everything we have. I want to understand what we are dealing with." The technician nodded and began accessing the Galactic Archive. Files appeared on the screen. Images of Earth flashed by. Hurricanes spinning across oceans. Earthquakes splitting continents, volcanic eruptions blackening the sky, ice ages that lasted for thousands of years, and through it all, humanity. Small, soft, fragile humanity. Surviving, adapting, conquering. The more Vethla read, the more disturbed she became. Earth was not just a death world. It was one of the most hostile planets ever discovered. And humans had not just survived there, they had risen to the top of the food chain. They had become the apex predators of a world that made Vareth Prime look like a vacation resort. "By the stars," she whispered. "What have we invited into our academy?" Down on the planet's surface, Ethan Cole walked deeper into the jungle. He did not know that he was being watched by the instructor. He did not know that his calm confrontation with the Sharak was being analyzed and discussed. He simply walked, one foot in front of the other, moving through the green shadows like a ghost. The jungle was starting to notice him. He could feel it. The sounds around him were changing. The insects chirped less. The birds called less often. The forest was watching, waiting, trying to understand this strange new creature that walked without fear through the domain of monsters. Ethan smiled to himself. Let them watch, he thought. Let them wonder. They would learn soon enough. By the second day, the jungle knew Ethan was there. Word spread through the forest in ways that only wild things understood. Scent markers on trees, subtle changes in animal calls, the invisible language of predators speaking to predators across miles of dense vegetation. Something new had entered their territory, something that walked upright on two legs, something that did not run. Ethan felt the change as he traveled deeper into the jungle. The eyes on him multiplied. Creatures watched from the shadows, from the high branches, from beneath the thick undergrowth. They observed him with the patient focus of hunters studying potential prey, but none of them attacked. He came upon the Velith hounds in the early afternoon. They were pack hunters, wolf-like creatures with sleek black fur and long limbs built for speed. Their eyes glowed red in the dim light of the forest floor. Each one was the size of a large dog, and there were at least a dozen of them circling through the trees. The pack surrounded him within minutes. They moved in perfect coordination, communicating through low growls and subtle body movements. Their alpha, a scarred female with torn ears and graying muzzle, emerged from the center of the formation. Ethan stopped and waited. The alpha approached slowly. She circled him at a distance of about 5 meters, her red eyes never leaving his face. The other hounds held their positions, watching, waiting for their leader's signal. Ethan did not move. He kept his hands visible at his sides. He breathed slowly and deeply. He held the alpha's gaze without challenge, without submission, simply acknowledgement. Two predators meeting in the wild. The alpha stopped circling. She lifted her head and sniffed the air, taking in his scent. Her lips pulled back slightly, revealing rows of sharp teeth. A low growl rumbled in her throat. Ethan did not flinch. For a long moment, nothing happened. The jungle seemed to hold its breath. Then the alpha turned away. She made a soft yipping sound, and the pack fell back, fading into the shadows like ghosts. Within seconds, Ethan was alone again. He let out a slow breath and continued walking. The pattern repeated throughout the day. A massive serpent, coiled around a tree trunk, unwound itself and slithered away as he approached. A pack of razor-beaked birds circled overhead for an hour before finally dispersing. A creature that looked like a cross between a bear and a gorilla watched him from a ridge, then turned and vanished into the rocks. Every apex predator he encountered gave him the same response. They studied him, considered him, and moved aside. On the orbital station, the command center had become a place of quiet panic. Instructor Vethla stood before a wall of screens, each one showing footage from different cadets scattered across the jungle. Most of the screens showed chaos. Cadets running, hiding, fighting for their lives. Emergency beacons activated, extraction teams scrambling. But one screen was different. One screen showed a single human, walking calmly through the most dangerous jungle in the sector. And everything getting out of his way. 17 confirmed apex predator encounters, the technician reported. 17 times they have backed down. We have never seen anything like this. Vethla clicked her mandibles slowly. And his vitals? Stable. Consistently stable. His heart rate has not exceeded normal parameters since he landed. That is not possible. Even the most trained warriors show stress responses in combat situations. Their bodies are built for it. The flood of chemicals, the heightened awareness, the survival instincts kicking in. This human shows none of that. Maybe humans are different, the technician suggested. Different does not begin to describe it. In the medical bay, Corin lay on a recovery bed. His left arm was wrapped in regenerative bandages after a Velith hound attack had nearly torn it off. He had been rescued just in time, extracted by a shuttle that barely escaped a second pack of hunters. He was watching the same feed as everyone else. The human walking alone through the jungle. The predators parting before him like water around a stone. An elderly Philarii nurse named Senna stood beside his bed, her fur gray with age, her eyes soft and knowing. She watched the screen with an expression that Corin could not read. "What is he?" Corin asked. His voice was weak, shaky. "What is that human?" Senna did not answer immediately. She simply watched as the footage showed Ethan passing beneath a thornwing matriarch, a massive bird of prey with a wingspan that could block out the sun. The creature had landed on a branch above him, close enough to strike. It had watched him pass. It had not attacked. "He is what his world made him," Senna finally said. "His world? Earth. They call it a Category 7 death world." "Do you know what that means?" Corin shook his head. "It means that every single thing on that planet has been trying to kill humans since they first appeared. The weather, the animals, the plants, the diseases, even the ground beneath their feet shifts and breaks. Their world is constantly at war with itself, and humans are caught in the middle. How did they survive?" Senna turned to look at Corin. Her eyes were ancient and deep. "They did not just survive. They conquered. They fought back against everything their world threw at them. They hunted the hunters. They killed the killers. They climbed to the top of the food chain on a planet that was designed to destroy them." On the screen, a Korath rose from the mud directly in Ethan's path. It was a subterranean predator, a nightmare of teeth and claws that had killed 7 cadets in previous training exercises. It blocked the trail, its eyeless head turning toward the human. Ethan stopped walking. He looked at the Korath. The Korath looked back, sensing him through vibrations and heat. Then the Korath crawled aside. It pulled its massive body off the trail and disappeared back into the mud. Ethan walked on. Corin felt something cold settle in his chest. "The predators are afraid of him." "No," Senna said softly. "They are not afraid. Fear makes creatures desperate, unpredictable. This is something else. This is recognition. Recognition of what? Of what he is. Deep in their instincts, in the ancient parts of their brains that govern survival, those predators can sense the truth. They look at that human and they see a fellow apex. They see something that has earned its place at the top of a food chain far more brutal than their own." Senna turned back to the screen. Her voice dropped to almost a whisper. "They moved aside because they know. They understand, in ways that we civilized species have forgotten, what it means to face a true predator. And they are wise enough to know that some fights are not worth having." Corin watched the screen in silence. The human continued walking, calm and steady, through a jungle full of monsters that stepped aside to let him pass. For the first time in his life, Corin understood what it meant to be from a gentle world, and he understood, with cold clarity, that humans were not, they were something else entirely. On the third night, the jungle changed. Ethan had made camp beside a small stream that trickled through a clearing in the forest. The water was cool and clean, filtered through layers of rock and soil. He had filled his canteen, eaten a portion of his rations, and settled down against a fallen log to rest. The twin moons of Varath Prime hung overhead, casting pale silver light through gaps in the canopy. The bioluminescent fungi glowed softly around the clearing, painting the shadows in shades of blue and green. It was peaceful, almost beautiful. Then the sound stopped. Ethan noticed immediately. One moment, the jungle was alive with the chirping of insects and the distant calls of night creatures. The next moment, there was nothing. Complete silence. Even the stream seemed to flow more quietly. He stood slowly. His hand moved to the knife at his belt, not to draw it, but just to touch it. A comfort. A reminder. The silence was not the respectful quiet he had experienced before. This was different. This was the silence of anticipation. The forest was holding its breath, waiting for something. Then he felt it. A presence. Massive, ancient, powerful. It pushed against his senses like a wave of pressure, making the air feel thick and heavy. Something was coming. Something that made the other predators seem like children in comparison. The creature emerged from the jungle on the far side of the clearing. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. It was nearly 4 meters tall at the shoulder. Its body was a twisted blend of multiple apex species, as if the jungle itself had taken the most dangerous parts of every predator and fused them into a single nightmare. Armored scales covered its hide in overlapping layers. Massive claws tipped each of its 6 limbs. Its head was broad and heavy, with a mouth full of teeth that could crush bone like paper, but it was the eyes that held Ethan's attention. They burned with an ancient, terrible intelligence. This was not a mindless beast. This was a thinking creature. A being that had watched over this jungle for longer than anyone could remember. The Varath Alpha. Ethan had heard the stories during the briefing. Most cadets thought the Alpha was a myth, a legend used to scare newcomers. But here it was, standing before him, very real and very deadly. The Alpha did not move aside. It did not retreat into the shadows. It walked forward with slow, deliberate steps, each footfall shaking the ground beneath Ethan's feet. This was not a chance encounter. This was intentional. The Alpha had come here specifically to meet him. A challenge, one apex to another. Ethan understood. The Alpha was the ruler of this world. It had watched him walk through its domain, had seen the other predators step aside, had heard the whispers that traveled through the jungle, and now it had come to see for itself what kind of creature could command such respect. He could run. He could activate his emergency beacon. He could try to hide. But Ethan did none of those things. Instead, he walked forward. His steps were calm and measured. His breathing was steady. His heart beat at its normal rhythm. He crossed the clearing one step at a time, closing the distance between himself and the most dangerous creature on the planet. The Alpha stopped, its burning eyes fixed on him, studying, analyzing. A low rumble built in its chest. Not quite a growl. Not quite a roar. A sound of consideration. Ethan stopped when he was just a few feet away. The Alpha towered over him, its massive head looming above like a mountain of teeth and scales. Up close, the creature was even more terrifying. Every inch of its body was designed for killing. It could destroy him with a single swipe of its claws. But it did not attack. Instead, the Alpha lowered its head. Slowly, carefully, it brought its face down until its jaws were level with Ethan's head. He could feel its breath washing over him, hot and humid, carrying the scent of old blood and jungle rot. For a long moment, they simply looked at each other. Then Ethan did something that even he did not fully understand. He reached up and placed his palm flat against the Alpha's snout. The scales were warm and rough beneath his hand. The creature could have bitten his arm off. It could have crushed him like an insect. It did neither. The Alpha closed its eyes. A sound escaped its throat. Something that might have been a sigh. When it opened its eyes again, something had changed. The challenge in its gaze had faded. In its place was something else. Recognition. Acceptance. The Alpha stepped back. It lowered its head in a gesture that looked almost like a bow. Then it turned and walked back into the jungle, vanishing into the shadows as silently as it had appeared. Ethan stood alone in the clearing, his hands still raised, his heart still steady. The jungle sounds slowly returned. Insects began chirping again. Night birds called from the branches. The stream gurgled over its rocky bed. Life resumed. Ethan let out a long, slow breath. He returned to his spot by the fallen log and sat down. His rations were still where he had left them. He picked up his meal and continued eating. On the orbital station, the command center had erupted into chaos. Instructor Vethla stood frozen before the main screen, her compound eyes reflecting the image of the human sitting calmly in the clearing, eating his dinner as if nothing had happened. "That was the Vareth Alpha," someone said. Their voice was shaking. The Vareth Alpha. The creature we classified as a planetary-level threat. The beast that has killed entire squads of trained soldiers. "It bowed to him," another voice said. "Did you see that?" "It bowed." Vethla said nothing. She could not speak. She had just witnessed something that would have been impossible to believe if she had not seen it with her own eyes. The apex predator of an entire planet had acknowledged a single human as its equal. "What are we dealing with?" someone asked. "What are these humans?" Vethla finally found her voice. "I do not know," she said. "But I am beginning to understand why the elder races hesitated before inviting humanity into the Concord." She turned away from the screen. Her mind was racing, trying to process what she had just witnessed. Humanity had only been part of the galactic community for a few decades. They were new, untested, largely unknown. Most species treated them as curiosities, strange creatures from a harsh world. Some looked down on them. Some feared them, without understanding why. Now Vethla understood. Humans were not just survivors. They were not just fighters. They were apex predators from a world so deadly that it made Varath Prime look tame. They carried millions of years of evolutionary warfare in their blood, and they walked through the universe with the same calm confidence that Ethan Cole walked through the jungle. That thought, more than anything else, kept her awake for the rest of the night. The extraction shuttle descended through the morning mist on the fourth day. Its engines hummed as it lowered toward a small clearing where surviving cadets had gathered to await rescue. Most of them were wounded. Many were traumatized. All of them looked like they had been through hell. Ethan Cole walked out of the jungle just as the shuttle touched down. He was not running. He was not limping. He walked with the same calm, steady pace he had used for the entire examination. His uniform was barely dirty. His survival kit was mostly full. He looked like he had just taken a pleasant stroll through a park. The other cadets stared at him in silence. Corin was among them, his arm still wrapped in bandages. He watched Ethan approach with a mix of awe and something that might have been fear. 3 days ago, he had refused to partner with the human because he thought Ethan would attract danger. Now he understood how wrong he had been. The danger had not avoided Ethan because he was lucky. It had avoided him because it recognized what he was. Ethan nodded politely to the other cadets as he boarded the shuttle. He found a seat near the back and strapped himself in. His expression was peaceful, almost content. He looked like a man who had just finished a satisfying job. The shuttle lifted off. Varath Prime fell away beneath them, the endless green jungle shrinking until it was just a patch of color on a marble, spinning in the void. Nobody spoke during the flight back to the station. The debriefing room was small and gray. A single table sat in the center, with 2 chairs on opposite sides. Instructor Vethla sat in one chair. Ethan sat in the other. Between them was a data pad showing the footage from his examination. 4 days of video compressed into a series of key moments. The Sherak stepping aside. The Veleth hounds retreating. The Korath crawling away. And finally, the Varath Alpha lowering its head in acknowledgement. Vethla was silent for a long moment. Her compound eyes studied the human before her, looking for answers that refused to reveal themselves. "Cadet Cole," she finally said, "I have reviewed the footage from your examination. I have consulted with xenobiologists, behavioral specialists, and combat theorists. I have studied every available file on Earth and its native species, and I still cannot adequately explain what we observed." Ethan waited. He did not seem nervous. He did not seem eager. He simply sat there, comfortable in his own skin. The apex predators of Varath Prime are among the most dangerous creatures in the galaxy, Vethla continued. They have killed trained soldiers. They have destroyed entire expeditions. They do not retreat. They do not yield. And yet, every single one that encountered you chose to step aside. She leaned forward slightly. How? Ethan considered the question. His eyes moved to the frozen image on the datapad. The Varath Alpha captured in the moment of its bow. There's nothing to explain, ma'am, he said. I disagree. There must be an explanation. Biology. Chemistry. Some unknown signal or phenomenon. Something that made those creatures perceive you differently than any other being they have encountered. Ethan smiled slightly. It was not a smug smile or a knowing smile. It was the smile of someone trying to explain something that felt obvious to them, but clearly was not obvious to others. On Earth, he said, we have a saying. It's something my grandfather told me before I left for the academy. Vethla waited. Predators recognize predators. The instructor clicked her mandibles slowly. Please explain. Ethan leaned back in his chair. He seemed to be reaching for words, trying to translate something fundamental into terms an alien could understand. Every creature on Vareth Prime looked at me and saw the same thing, he said. They saw 300 million years of survival. They saw ancestors who hunted megafauna with nothing but sharpened sticks and clever traps. They saw a species that didn't just survive its death world, we conquered it. He paused. His eyes met Vethla's compound gaze without flinching. Humans evolved on a planet that tried to kill us every single day. The weather, the animals, the diseases, even the land itself. Everything was an enemy. And we won. We fought back against nature, and we came out on top. That leaves a mark on a species. It gets written into our blood, our bones, our instincts. Vethla processed his words. You are saying that the predators sensed this history? This evolutionary heritage? Not consciously. Animals don't think like that. But they feel it. Something deep in their instincts told them that I was not prey. That I was not even a competitor. I was something above them on the food chain. Something that had earned its place through millions of years of violence and survival. Ethan stood. The debriefing seemed to be over. But he paused at the door. They moved aside, instructor, because somewhere deep in their instincts, they understood a simple truth. He looked back at her. His eyes were calm, steady, ancient. We didn't come from a world that created predators. We came from the world that created the predator's predator. The door closed behind him. Vethla sat alone in the silent room for a very long time. The weight of his words settled into her mind like stones sinking into deep water. She thought about the Galactic Concord, the alliance of civilized species that spanned the galaxy. She thought about the careful diplomatic processes that had led to humanity's admission into the community of stars. The elder races had hesitated. They had debated. They had questioned whether bringing humans into the fold was wise. Now she understood their hesitation. It was not fear of what humans might do. It was not concern about their technology, or their weapons, or their politics. It was fear of what they already were. Humanity was not just another species joining the galactic community. They were something different, something that had been forged in the fires of a death world and emerged as the ultimate survivor. They were apex predators wearing the masks of civilization, walking among gentler species with the instincts of killers sleeping just beneath the surface. And they did not even realize it. To them, it was just normal. It was just who they were. Vethla finally stood and left the debriefing room. She walked through the corridors of the station, past groups of cadets recovering from the examination, past staff members going about their duties. She passed Ethan Cole in one of the hallways. He nodded politely to her. Just a young man. Barely an adult by human standards. Friendly. Unassuming. Normal. But Vethla now saw something else when she looked at him. She saw the jungle. She saw the predators stepping aside. She saw the Varath Alpha bowing its head. She saw 300 million years of survival staring back at her through calm, human eyes. And she understood, at last, why the galaxy would never be the same now that humanity had arrived.